Hello and welcome back to Art Masters with me, Mrs. Portilla. Today we'll be learning about an artist, Helen Hardin. Helen Hardin had strong ties to Native American symbolism and Kachinas. She used abstract art to make these Kachinas, geometric shapes, repeated patterns, and lines. So today we'll be making our own sun Kachina, and we're going to be using geometric shapes and simple colors to make an abstract Kachina, just like Helen Hardin. So once you're ready, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, to get started on our Hopi sun Kachina, we are going to get either your orange or your red little square paper. So we could set everything else aside. You should only have one of these. So we're gonna watch me first. So you remember looking at the print in class or maybe one of my little images of the sun Kachina. It's a big circle, right? So when we look at Helen Hardin's work, her circles are actually perfect circles. I bet she used a template also. So the first step we're gonna do is we're gonna place our plate in the center of, we're gonna grab our pencil and we are going to trace. So you hold down on the plate, not too hard, you wanna smush it. And then I usually lightly push my pencil against the edge to trace. Oh, I messed up. Guess what? Doesn't matter because I'm gonna cut this out. So don't worry about erasing. We just wanna go over our shape until we get that shape. So you can see I messed up a couple times. It doesn't matter. I don't need to erase because I'm gonna cut it out and I'll flip it over. So let's go ahead and get a plate. You might need to share. And we're gonna use our pencil and we're gonna draw this circle. We do not need to erase because we'll be gluing it down. All right, so the next step is gonna be cutting out our circle. So we're gonna have our scissors. I like to pinch one of these little corners and I start with just like a little snip in the middle, okay? Maybe you even want to do a little snip on the side. And then I like to just turn my paper around. So I like to just do little sections at a time. It makes it a little bit easier. So let's go ahead and get our scissors and take our time cutting around our circle. And very important, we're gonna keep all of these scraps because we're gonna use those later. So don't throw away any of our paper today until the very end. Okay, excellent job. So we should just have one big circle. And now we all have these three little strips of paper. So this is where we get to be a little bit creative. So when we look at the sun god Kachina, you'll notice it's a circle with feathers behind their head. Now the feathers are a little bit abstract, right? So we have the big circle face and they have some abstract feathers outside of the head. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut these strips of paper. I'm gonna show you a couple different ways. So let's watch first and then you could decide. So the easiest way is you just fold one of these in half and we cut it into two strips. Okay, another way, I could cut it into three strips. So I would do a really skinny one like this. And then maybe I would do two thicker ones. Maybe you want to use your scissors and you want to make it a little bit wavy. So I would just make these little hills like this. Okay, so let's go ahead and you could cut maybe a wavy strip, maybe three out of this one, or maybe two, okay? So you could be a little bit creative here, but we don't want to cut away. We want to keep everything. So let's keep it simple and we'll make it a little bit more exciting in my next step. Okay, great. So you'll notice I did a little zigzag on one. There's a wavy one, and I have my three little strips right here. If you want to make your shape maybe a little more exciting, let's think about it, okay? So this might be for some of you older kids because this is a little bit hard to do with these little scissors. So let's say you really like my zigzaggy shape here. So you want to pick maybe one of your thicker pieces, and maybe I'm going to break this one in half. So I go cut, cut. Maybe I want to make this two-sided. So I would go cut, cut. You see how I'm still keeping this a strip? I don't want a bunch of little pieces. I kind of want a bunch of these long, narrow pieces. Okay, and I'm going to keep this little piece as well. Okay, maybe I just want to cut some of these and make these a pointed end like this. So I could go snip, make it kind of an arrow, and snip. Again, I'm going to keep those because what if I use those later? Let me show you that again. I snipped a corner, and then I turned it over, and I snipped a corner. Okay, maybe I just want to make it like a down little triangle, like just that little side. Okay, and maybe I'll do it the opposite way on the other side. Okay, so if you want to make your shapes a little more interesting, again, I don't want a bunch of these little shapes. I want to try to keep my longer scraps. Maybe you're just fine with what you have and you're just going to wait for our next step. Okay, great. And we should still be keeping all of those scraps, right? Because we're going to use those later. Now, you may have noticed there's a bag of, I call these fun scissors. So these are optional, maybe for some of you second graders, because these kind of, they don't always work right. So I don't want you to get super frustrated. So I was able to make my own really cool shape without these scissors, but if you want to try some of these scissors, you can. So you'll notice this design has a little wavy design. This one has this other interesting design. So if I still have a big piece, I could either cut on the edge or right in the middle. So let's see what happens if I cut in the middle. Snip. It's giving me that little cool curvy edge. If you want to try out one of these weird edged scissors, you may. Okay, excellent. And you'll notice these ones I just left alone, and that's still gonna look pretty cool, okay? So now we should have all of our parts to our sun Kachina. We have our scraps, we have our sun rays, and we have our circle. So we're gonna talk about arrangement. When we arrange things, we could put our circle off center. Do you see how this one's a little bit up and to the right? This one is in the center, but it's a little bit higher than directly in the center, okay? And then this one looks like it's right about in the middle of the paper. So we're not gonna glue yet, we're just gonna arrange. So we wanna move everything to the side and get our black paper. So we're gonna take our circle and let's just think, that's what it would look like right in the center. Let's move it down. Now if I put it down here, if I want it to be a balanced piece of art, right now, this is, whoa, way, looks a little weird, right? But when I add my feathers, I'll do it in a way so the art is balanced. So if you think it looks kind of cool having your circle down low, up high, we'll work with that. So I'm gonna do one that's maybe down there. Maybe, I'll do one with it right in the center, okay? So just kind of lay it out. This should just take a minute or two and we're just gonna be thinking with our circle, okay? So after we have a quick idea of where we might want to put our head, then we're going to put our sun rays. We're going to arrange them kind of like the spokes of a bicycle, okay? So I would take my circle away. I already know about where I want it, right? And then I would start laying out my rays. So I don't have any glue yet. So we'll notice Helen Hardin liked to use geometric shapes, but everything was still balanced. There was some overlapping, right? So right now we're just gonna put some of the rays behind our face. And maybe you realize, I don't like it right in the center. This would be the time you could move it a little off center, right? And then we would just chop off any excess layers that we have. Start arranging our Kachina before we glue. Don't worry about any details on the face. We're just doing the rays and the face. We're getting an idea of our layout. Okay, once we have our basic design, we're gonna start gluing down. Now you'll notice I didn't use all of my strips, and I may want to overlap some of these strips. Before we glue down, I don't want to waste any shape. So you'll notice I have a bunch underneath. So I'm going to put it just about there, and then I'll snip that off and use that later. Maybe you want to overlap a shape. Maybe you wait. Maybe you say, you know what? Let's glue it down first, and then I'll add the overlapping shape. Okay, so we're going to glue down the basic shapes, and then we'll kind of cut them off the edge, right? So let's just lift up our face, and then we'll start gluing down our pieces. And we don't have to use all those strips. We could save some. Okay, excellent job. So we should have our feathers glued. And now I haven't glued my face down yet because I want to make sure I cover everything. So this is the time where maybe you want to look. You wouldn't want to do that because that's not covering that, right? So we want to move our face to about covering everything. And then I'm going to look at the pencil side. I see a little bit of pencil there. So I'm going to put my glue on the yucky side, right? And then I'm going to flip it over. And that's the nice thing about a glue stick is you can kind of move it around a little bit. Okay, let's look at the next one. So this one, I actually did something intentionally here. I liked that one off of the edge, but I wouldn't want to put it here, so I'm gonna put it there. So I might have moved it slightly from my original place, but that's okay. That's why we waited to glue this. So we're looking for the yucky side if there is one. So let's go ahead and glue down that center. We should still have scraps. We're not done yet. Before I get to the details on the face or anything like that of our Kachina sun god, I want to look for balance, right? So we should still have some scraps left. So I'm noticing, where does your eye go on this one? My eye goes right here. I need something here. I have this from the beginning of our cut. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to cut a strip. Maybe I'll put that there. But when I do one thing to one side, I like to do it to the other side. So that means I'm going to add some more red on the other side. That's called balance, right? It's always good to have at least two of the same color, maybe more. So let's look to balance our rays with our scraps. So you still have that original paper, but remember, if I cut one little piece of orange, I'm probably going to want to do 2 or 3 more. And, oh, remember this, guys? Look at this. If I cut the scraps off of my side, okay, so we have the scraps from the beginning. We have the scraps that are hanging off the edge of the paper, and we're not throwing any scraps away, okay? So let's balance. Where's your eye going? What needs a little bit more? So don't go too far. This person made just a little arrow right there. This person just has 4 little strips, and it looks great. So less can be more in this situation. So think about overlapping and balance. All right, so we should have our feather rays behind our Sun Kachina, and their head is glued on. Should feel pretty balanced, and we should still have a decent amount of scraps left. Again, it's totally okay if you just put 4 strips and you made it super simple. So let's do a face. Are Helen Hardin's faces realistic or abstract? They're abstract and very, very simple. So we're just going to be thinking about a mouth, nose, eyes, and then maybe a headband or something, okay? And I just have some of these parts that I had cut off and I still have, right? So we cut off any parts from the edge. So maybe I do a headband. So I might glue right on there. Okay, so now I have some yellow here. Cut this to make 2 eyes. Maybe you have a little bit of blue and you want to make that a nose. You could also cut your shapes into your scraps into different shapes like circles, squares, triangles, okay? So let's go ahead and just get some simple eyes, nose, mouth using our scraps, maybe a headband. We're thinking geometric shapes. We're thinking balance, and you could cut into those shapes. Simple is totally fine, guys. All right, excellent job on your Kachinas. So we should have our sun rays, our face, super simple. We didn't use any pen or pencil. It was all paper and scraps. So once you're done, you're gonna flip your paper over. You're gonna glue your Helen Hardin tag that tells you about the artist on the back, and you're gonna use your pencil, and you're going to write your name on the little white sticker, and then when you're finished, you're gonna hand your piece of art to your helper or your teacher, and you're gonna start cleaning up. Great job on your sun god, Kachina. Great job with your Native American Kachinas. Hope that you guys have a very nice, balanced sun Kachina, that you have some repeated lines and patterns. And if you have time to look and evaluate each other's work, that you'll point out the balance and the composition. I hope you enjoy doing your Kachinas with Helen Hardin. We'll see you next time on Art Masters.